Fans, we are back live with another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and we have a very special guest tonight, a man who has accomplished in not only the field, the industry of professional wrestling, but also the entertainment industry through his stunt work in a number of notable productions that we're going to talk about. But you will know him wrestling wise as Eddie Venom or the Motor City Monster, but his name is Mr. J.R. Adams. Jay, welcome to the program tonight, sir.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
But before we get to Jay, as per the custom and the tradition here, I would be remiss if I did not welcome Mr. Morris Shortall to his own program, Mr. Cheap Heat himself. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I could see Jay's having a little bit of a laugh at that. This is an on-running joke now.
I like it.
Yeah.
Technology.
Thanks for working into my show.
Yeah. Technology is a wonderful thing in when it works and when we go where the Wi-Fi is the strongest. But Jay, I wanted to ask you right off the bat, and I think this is a fan question that they really appreciate, which is how did you find yourself wanting to pursue a career in this tough business, this professional wrestling business?
Well, I just like a lot of us, I grew up watching wrestling. I grew up in the golden era of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Savage, and so I was always a huge fan of wrestling and always wanted to somehow be a part of it. But growing up in certain areas of Detroit, you don't see that as a possibility. Depending on your region where you kind of grow up, you expect kind of your career to kind of follow a certain path. You know what I mean? So you don't expect to be able to get to these things. But luckily, I was able to meet some people in the industry, and I ended up finding a school and learned that there are wrestling schools out there that you can actually train and learn how to do it. And was able to go from there and never looked back.
You just mentioned your training process, and I think that's also a very insightful question to ask. Your experience training, given the differences in more recent times. I understand you were trained amongst others by ROH Original Truth Martini. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Truth. So I started out in a school in a little town in Michigan called Jetto, Michigan. We're actually trained with the class that was me and Alex Shelley. Actually, were in this class together. We were trained by a guy that had limits as to his training abilities. So both of us actually, and some others as well, moved on from that. And then I got together with Truth Martini, and he became my mentor and one of my best friends, and traveled around the whole Midwest with that guy plenty of times.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, then when you were starting out in wrestling, was movies and TV and extra work or anything like that? Were you doing any of that on the side, or did that come later down the line?
No, I actually years and years before I had been an extra in a movie down in Florida when I used to live there. But that was just a kind of one-off. I didn't expect anything more to come of it, and I didn't do anything in film until years and years later. So I was actually wrestling for about 10 or 12 years when I actually broke my back in the ring. And that's when, after wrestling for a while and, getting some chance, I get to wrestle for WWE a few times, TNA, things like that, Ring of Honor. I decided at that point I was getting older. I was no longer trying to get into WWE, so I was going to, find something else to do. And that's when I ended up transitioning into doing the acting and stunt work.
So with the broken back going into stunt work, is that not a bit dangerous? Well, no.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I say, I retired from pro wrestling. I broke my back, and then I got into stunt work. They're like, "Oh, that's so much safer." And but it actually is. I mean, we were way more rehearsed. When I'm doing a movie or a TV show, I could do that same thing over and over and over again, rehearse it 30 times before we have to do it. Pro wrestling is live. You're out there. And you don't get 30 chances to do a spot. You get one, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So But yeah, so it's a lot. And if we can fall on a path, we do. If we can add anything and make it safe, we do. Because stuntmen, unlike a lot of wrestlers, I know myself when I first started, we don't really pay attention to taking care of our bodies as much as we should, and elongating our career. So that's another thing that I learned getting into the stunt business, how to do that a little bit better. So
Nice.
You had some really notable opponents on the independents, which I'll ask you some of. But one of the matches that jumped out at me, being a fan of his work, and given your size as well, it would have been a match that I most certainly would have booked, was your encounter with Mr. Curtis Hughes. Do you have any memories of working Mr. Hughes?
yeah, Curtis was cool, man. We used to work for a company. It was actually when I first started out in the business too. I was working for actually the Sheik, the original Sheik. His son, Ed Farhat, was running a promotion with Sabu as the big star, and then he brought in a bunch of other guys. So he did a lot of house shows. We would do a TV taping, and then we do house shows for them. And Mr. Hughes was one of them that he always brought in. So we spent a lot of time together, and he was such a cool guy because you get to talking with guys like that, and you get all these stories and the behind the scenes of things that we grew up watching, and to hear the how that whole thing came together was really cool. And he was a fun guy to work with. They say there's certain guys out there that you got to stay away with him, but Mr. Hughes was always cool in my book. That was a good dude right there.
Excellent.
What was the most surprising thing to you when you entered the wrestling business? Like, how tough is it, or how tough was your journey?
Yeah, you hear about being on the road and just that road life and how the injuries catch up to you and stuff like that. You go into that knowing, but until you actually really experience it and go through it, you don't really understand it. Being on the road is a tough life. That's a lot of that's mostly what wrestling is. You're on the road more of the time than you're actually working. You're actually driving. So the road work and just how to deal with being on the road and dealing with injuries and things like that, getting yourself ready so that you can do the next show. That was a big learning curve there, because you go into it thinking it's going to be what you see on TV, and you think it's going to be, oh yeah, I can do that. That's going to be easy. And that's that whole thing about paying your dues is all about. You start out and you realize, oh, this isn't as easy as it looks, and that's what weeds out a lot of guys. So you either stick with it and work your ass off, or you don't, and you get weeded out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Wanted to also ask you, this is a two-part question. First of all, you did some TV work for TNA Explosion, and you worked Monty Brown, but you also faced the Alpha Male in some additional matches. I wanted to ask you how the Explosion shot came about, and memories of working with Monty, a talent that seemed to be, the sky was the limit, went to the WWE, and then disappeared off the scene after what was a very successful run in TNA.
So Monty's actually from Michigan here as well. He's about an hour north of me, and for about a good 2.5 years, me and him wrestled each other quite a bit all through Michigan, Canada. I mean, we traveled around and we wrestled a lot because there isn't a lot of guys the size that we are. So when we are able to get matched up together and have good matches, you end up doing it a lot. So Monty he's one of my favorite guys in the business. I still every once in a while I'll talk to him. He was a genuinely sweetheart. We say that about some people sometimes, but he was like one of those guys. As massive and as savage as he was in the ring, outside of the ring, he was the sweetest guy in the world. And I've loved watching his success because, like I said, I got where you were is because you worked me so much. I got you so good that you were able to do those things. One of my things, he has a little tiny scar in his chest from we were chopping each other back and forth. I got him a really good chop, and it just gave it this little. And he always teased me about. He's like, "Oh, you scarred my beautiful chest." So every time I see him on TV, I was like, "I did that."
Do you know why? I mean, it was reported that he left to take care of family members. Do you know why he never got back into the business in any capacity? I heard he was a personal trainer.
Yeah, he does that. To be honest, he does so well with that. He didn't really ever need the wrestling, and he was a great performer, but I don't think he really. Wrestling wasn't part of him. It was what he did, and it was his job, and he enjoyed it. But it wasn't with like it is with other guys, where wrestling is a part of your life, where you can't imagine yourself not doing it. And I think that was the difference for him. He had so many things outside of wrestling that he didn't really need the wrestling, and he's able to have a happy and fulfilling life doing the stuff outside of wrestling. Where there's some guys that can't, you know what I mean? There's some guys that just can't get away from it, but he was able to do that. He was as great as a performer as he is. He's happy doing what he's doing. He doesn't necessarily need to get back into that. So he's happy with his family and his career. And I wish him all the best, dude. I love that guy to death.
Was your TNA experience I take it Monty
yeah. Sorry about that. I forgot about that part. Yeah, Monty actually it wasn't really. It was more of I was in contact with the office quite a bit. I would send them tapes. You know, that was back in the day. I don't know how you do it anymore, but back in the day, that's how we did it. We'd send tapes to TNA and WWE to the talent relations, and updated tapes, updated looks. I hope to get a chance to work with you. So there was a couple times I was offered a couple of tryout matches, whatever they were, and one of them I wasn't able to make, but luckily that one I was able to make, and I got to tag up. It was a handicap match, Monty versus me, and another one of my super good friends, Nate Webb, Spider Nate Webb, who's a guy out of Indiana who I've wrestled with for 20 years. I love that guy. So it was just happened to be that I was one of those dates that I was finally able to go down there, and I spent the weekend. And like I said, I trained with Alex Shelley, so I was good friends with him and Chris Sabin. So they were, hopping off at that point, just going crazy at that point. So I was able to go down there with them and hang out. And shoot, that was a long time ago. AJ Styles was still there. Dusty worked with us in the ring. Dusty Rhodes beforehand worked with us in the ring a little bit. I mean, that was, man, it's actually nice you bring that up, because I actually forgot about some of those experiences. That was a fun time for sure.
Mm.
How did the WWE shots? How did they happen? Was that a similar experience from sending tapes to talent relations, etc.?
Yeah, they did have different guys. For a while, Nova was doing it, where he was talent relations. So I'd send him tapes every few months of new stuff, and whenever they would be in Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, in the surrounding areas, if they needed guys for enhancement talent, I'd send emails in preparation for that all the time. Tommy Dreamer was one for a while too, and Tommy actually Nova booked me, but then after he left and Tommy took it over, Tommy booked me a few times to do some dark matches. I got to do a SmackDown match, I got to do a Heat match, and some other enhancement. I got to be a Druid for the Undertaker, and I got to do stuff like that. So it was just about sending tapes with updated looks, and seeing if you need anything, I'm available.
Yeah. That's often one of my questions to guys who came in and done enhancement. It's about that extra work. And you just mentioned you were a Druid there. Is there any other weird things that they got you to do in WWE? People are telling me, like, I had a guy the other day, he was like, I was wrestling in a match, and then I was a cop, and then I was 3 different things in one day.
Yeah, no, I think that I got to be a Druid a couple times. We did a Saturday night's main event here in Detroit. It was the first Saturday night's main event in years that they had done, and they were promoting a casket match with Taker. So me and some other Druids carried a casket out to the ring, and then for WrestleMania, when it was here in Detroit, I got to be one of the Druids that carried a torch out to the ring for Undertaker's entrance as well. But the other times, it was just you had come in and basically just work out with the new guys in the ring beforehand, that are just fresh getting on TV, and just getting their move sets down and their things like that. They would work with I would work with them and whoever the agents were, whether it be Fit Finley or Steamboat or things like that. They would give them things to do, and then they do them on us, basically. So we do little mini matches and basically prep these guys for their upcoming TV stuff. Shoot, I remember working with Sheamus. Like he was brand new. Like, I'm sorry, not Sheamus, but Drew McIntyre. He was like so young. They had just brought him over from Scotland, and like 2 weeks before, and he was brand new. And to see where he's come now is really cool to see how far these guys have progressed.
Yeah, him and Sheamus came up together, and they both worked extensively over here into that as well. So
Oh yeah.
those two guys have really. I know Drew is from Scotland, but he done a lot of his wrestling here in Ireland as well. Happy for him.
Yeah.
So you were part of that amazing WrestleMania 23 in Ford Field. What I actually caught that live there, and it was one of the more impressive ones
nice.
of the modern era. What was that particular experience like to be part of the show, given the scope and grandeur of WrestleMania? Do you have any memories of that particular day?
Yeah, that whole day was pretty amazing. Just that building alone, it was at Ford Field in Detroit, which is where the Detroit Lions played. It's a massive building, and just so many tunnels and things like that. And just to be in that building and be able to see all the backstage, the sets that they build are just unbelievable. But just seeing how excited everyone, because I've worked other WWE shows, I've worked SmackDowns, I've worked, but this was such a cool vibe. Everybody was just in a great mood. They up at the very top where the suites are, they had the party. So as soon as everybody was done, they were going up there and partying. But it was a great event. And, being the biggest crowd I had ever wrestled in front of was probably 14,000 people at Joe Louis Arena when I wrestled for WWE. So, but when you walk out and you're carrying a torch and it's on fire and you're just hoping you don't trip over your robe and run into the guy in front of you, and then you step through that curtain and there's 85,000 people, something like that. That is unbelievable. I mean, I don't, like I said, I've wrestled in front of crowds, biggest crowd about 15,000. I can't imagine how these guys just, the just the noise of it alone, how you don't get just caught up in it. It's amazing, because I almost did just carrying a torch out. It was crazy, but it's just the magnitude of it is just amazing.
Can we talk for a second? Then you mentioned obviously that you got that a broken back, which is obviously a major problem. How did that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
It was during a match, doing a tag match, and I was doing the Abyss backbreaker, where I had him in a torture rack in my shoulders and dropped down to my butt. It just so happened that instead of sliding off my shoulders, his weight just didn't distribute properly, and it just stayed on my shoulders, so that when we hit the mat, his whole body compressed my spine. So it broke one vertebrae, and then they said it crushed another one. And yeah, that was that was bad. So it happened, and I said, I'm real hurt. And and the guy I was wrestling, he's like, well, we only got 2 minutes left. Just go to get through it. I'm like, so me being the idiot I am, I'm like, all right, here we go. So we finish the match. It's a tag match. We do a 10 punch on opposite corners. I'm up there doing the 10 punch, just going, oh God, and we both do our double finishers, and huge finish. Everything's great. And then I get through the curtain and I collapse because of the adrenaline is worn off and now the pain's kicking in. It was pretty bad.
Wow. You wrestled like a lot of legends, big names, etc. during your career, and I just wanted to do a name association and your take on your matches with them, starting with the good old Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Hacksaw's the best. He's one of my favorite people. I've gotten to travel with him a little bit and do matches with him, and he's met my wife, and we've done a little mini road trip from Canada back over to Detroit with my wife and him, and he's just a great guy. I love him, and he's the easiest person in the world to work with. You don't have to do anything. You go in there and you just listen, and it's the easiest thing in the world to do. And I love it. I love how over he gets with the fans.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Roode of TNA fame, Beer Money, and of course his WWE NXT run and main roster.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, to see some of these guys like Bobby Roode and Petey Williams. I remember being Nate Matson and Truth Martini. We were at the Michigan Invasion, and the three of us would wrestle in Border City Wrestling in Windsor. And we a lot of times we do a lot of tag matches versus Bobby and Petey, and they were just a blast to work with. It's so cool to see them. I was closer to Petey than I was Bobby, but I love that whole Canada crew, that whole Border City crew. They're good dudes.
Mm-hmm. And you did some work with A1 as well, one of the lesser remembered members of the Team Canada faction, correct?
Yeah, Al, good old Al, man. We wrestled another guy that's it's a big guy. So here in the Detroit area, I wrestled him quite a bit here, either in Detroit or over in Windsor. Just a big dude, and he was a bouncer at bars, and I was a bouncer at bars. So we'd always tell our favorite bouncer stories to each other. Al was good too.
What about the man who's quite controversial to this day, given his podcast platform and fights with fans on Twitter, the Disco Inferno?
Disco's, yeah. I never really hung out with him too much. We just did a couple of shows where we, in Detroit, we have a XICW Extreme Intense Championship Wrestling. It's it's the longest running Michigan promotion that's been going forever. It's run by my buddy DBA, and we did quite a few where we brought in ECW originals, and so we would have matches with like Rhino and Shane Douglas and things like that against our XICW crew. And then all of a sudden, like Disco would just be thrown in there. And it was just fun to watch. But yeah, I really did like some tag stuff with him. Never got to work any singles with him. But I haven't kept up on that stuff. I didn't know about his controversial podcast. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, keep it at 100. It's always an entertaining listen with Conan as well as him. What about another individual who is no stranger to controversy, but profiled on Dark Side of the Ring this year, Buff Bagwell?
Buff, man. So that XICW, actually, we bring in Buff quite a bit back in the day. And used to, it's weird because I have a soft spot in my heart for Buff. But I have seen him do absolutely stupid things. And I'm like, I just wish he would, get through his head. Like I said, I've seen all the things recently and how well he's done, and him and Scotty Riggs getting sober together and working out, and it seems like he's doing fantastic. And I super hope that it continues that way because he does have a good heart, man. And he just has made some bad decisions over the years, and so I wish the best for him. I hope that this he's able to stay clean and sober and hopefully get productive again, man. Get around. Teach some of these young guys, they would, all the knowledge that he has for all the places that he's been and all the places he's wrestled. He has so much knowledge that he can put on to these young guys. I'd like to see him do it. So I hope he does. So we'll see.
For sure. And this one was interesting in that he had a limited run on the independents, but Heidenreich.
Yeah. Heidenreich was cool, man. We did a couple shows. We worked, out in the Illinois area. We worked for AWA Chicago, and he brought in Heidenreich, and we had talked about doing some more, maybe even doing some tag stuff together. But we got to work together a couple times. Never really, after that, I never really saw him do anything after that. So, but he was super cool to me. I mean, I never had a problem with him, and we talked, like I said, we talked about maybe possibly doing some stuff together, later on. So, yeah, nice guy to me. I liked him.
And last but not least, the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, were they? How did you find them in the ring? We find a variety of people that have been in the ring with them. Some say, very, very light. Some say like wrestling a couple of sacks of concrete.
Well, it all depends, because my situation when I wrestled, so I wrestled Rick on solo. He's in the Bay City, Michigan area. That's where they're from. So he would still be in that area a lot, and he'd do a lot of shows. While Scott was still with WWE or TNA, whoever it was at the time. but then, Scott got released, and it was kind of rumored as to whether, he was going to be doing some indie stuff here and there. Those two guys hadn't tagged up together in, I think, 10 years. And this was the first time they were going to tag up together in their hometown of Bay City, Michigan.
Cool.
And I got to wrestle these guys, and I was actually an add-on. Whoever was supposed to wrestle, it was a tag match. I think it was, I think it was actually Sin from Sin, who was Kazarni.
Sin Bodhi.
Yeah, Sin Bodhi. He was, for some reason, got held up at the border, and so me and Elvis Elliott, we got to wrestle the Steiner brothers, and it was the coolest thing because first it was Rick was doing a singles match, and then me and Elvis go do the run in and start beating him down, and Scott makes a save. And in their hometown of Bay City, seeing those guys, the crowd went absolutely insane. And for the first time in 10 years, seeing that, Rick get on all fours and Scott go over top of him and face off with us, I was blown away. But that was a super. They were great with us. They were just on a super high too, So they were great with us. That was the only time I've worked with Scott, and he was fine. He gave me the Steiner recliner, and he made sure he's like, beforehand, I was like, do you want to finish with the recliner? He's like, yeah, okay. And he's like, make sure, you keep your legs up, otherwise, I did that to Boss Man and he didn't do it. And I accidentally, he passed out for like 3 minutes. So don't do that. I was like, okay, don't worry, I won't. So, he didn't have to do, he didn't have to give me a heads up. He could have just done whatever. He didn't have to do anything. He could have just, it's Scott Steiner. He could have just beat the crap out of me in his hometown and couldn't, but they were great with us. They gave us a bunch of stuff, and they made us look good. We made them look good, and it was a memorable moment for sure. It was really cool.
Very cool.
Jay, is there a moment or a match that stands out to you when you look back at your career and say that was my favorite moment and our match?
Hell, I've been lucky. Like I said, I've been super lucky. I've gotten to wrestle a lot of really cool people. That, like I said, that I've grown up watching, like Hacksaw, I've become friends with, and guys like Sabu and Tommy Dreamer. That these guys that are still friends with to this day. That that I made all through wrestling. I never would have met these guys, except through wrestling. So, I kind of got sidetracked. What was the question again? Sorry.
Just if you have a favorite moment.
Oh yeah, match. the favorite. Not necessarily have a favorite. I did get another really fun time as I got to wrestle Tito Santana, which Tito Santana to me, we got to wrestle. They did a show in Detroit. We have a Mexican town area, and we did a show, and I think it was on a Cinco de Mayo, and they brought Tito Santana, and he was the epitome of my youth. Like when I think of Tito Santana, I think of me as a 6-year-old sitting on the floor watching the big console TV on Saturday morning watching wrestling. That's with my age and everything, that's what I associated with. So getting to wrestle him was really cool. But not only to wrestle him, but just to hang out with him beforehand, and like what a cool guy he was. He was he's a legend, and he was such a nice guy. He's a teacher, and got to find out about his personal life and stuff like that. That was really cool to me. Like, even besides getting to wrestle him, but just to be able to have a conversation with him and just learn about him and his life away from wrestling was actually really cool. So that was a pretty fun moment. I mean, besides all the other big shows that I've been lucky enough to do with whether they were the WWE shows or TNA shows, those are always fun too. But for me, it's like those personal things that I remember more, that mean more to me.
And Herb Simmons just came in there and said that today is Tito's birthday. There you go.
Oh, no kidding! That is crazy.
On the flip side of that, Jay, was there ever anyone that you were kind of disappointed by in WWE, or was there anyone around the wrestling circuit that kind of had an ego or anything?
Yeah, I mean, shoot. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of egos out there. I mean, there's guys that I've wrestled indie shows 20 years ago that are huge superstars now that get their names chanted and can do no wrong, but weren't always the nicest people to the nicest people to other people coming up. You know what I mean? So there's always that kind of thing. But even with the film industry now too, you're going to run into that from time to time. But I try to just focus on staying positive myself. It's easy to get wrapped up in all that, but it's not worth it. I find out the people pretty quick of who are like my vibe, who I'm going to be cool with.
Yeah.
And then the other ones I'll just be cordial with, and just let it, just let it be professional. But yeah, there's always those guys, but I try not to. Never any of the legendary guys or any of the guys I grew up with. I've never had a problem with any of those guys at all. They've always been super cool. It's just younger guys that I came up with that are jerks.
I would think that even since you were out of the business, judging by the stories that we hear, it's even worse these days.
Yeah, who knows? It's kind of such a weird thing for me too, because when I retired from the wrestling, like it was my life. I mean, I was, and I love it. But then when I retired and I started to slowly back away from it, I hate to say it, but things got healthier for me as far as like mentally and things like that. I don't have to deal with some of the drama and things like that are involved with, I can just stay out of that, which is weird because now I find myself on the outside. I don't really pay attention to all the drama and stuff. So like you said, I didn't know anything about the Disco Inferno podcast because I kind of stay out of that whole situation. I stay away from the negative and just try to stay positive. And
you're right.
so I'm not in the loop anymore. I stay out of the loop on purpose.
Now we'll talk about some of your resume in terms of the stunt work in the entertainment industry. Got another two-part question for you here. It's obvious with the physicality aspects what the benefit or the leg up that you would have as a wrestler getting into that end. What would be the hardest point that you had to do in terms of making that transition and that adjustment from in the ring to on the set?
It's actually the biggest transition is like I said, when I got into movies, I kind of learned how to protect my body a little bit better. So yeah, one of the biggest transitions with wrestling, everything is a bump. Everything's flat on your back on whatever it is, you're flat bump and boom. Stunts, you don't necessarily have to do that. There's ways to roll and things like that. When you can roll, you don't have to flat back. There's ways to protect your body. There's different that I wasn't doing when I was wrestling that those bad habits, not necessarily bad because it does look good, but I would do that on film and stuff like that, right? To just take just a crash where I would like a wrestling bump. And they're like, that was good, but you're only going to be able to do that so many times. You got to chill. And I was like, yeah, so that was one of the things I had to learn because you got to do that. Like I said, wrestling, you're doing it one time. You're doing it on a set. You're probably doing 8 takes of that same fall. So you do have to protect yourself. You have to learn how to be able to stay healthy and to just do it to where you can do it over and over again. So that kind of thing. And also the fighting, the fighting's a lot different, in wrestling, I'm hitting you. Film, I'm 6 inches away from your body, from your face. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a transition, but I mean, everything that I've been lucky enough to accomplish with that is all based from the wrestling, though. I always tell everybody, whatever I'm doing now, it's all comes from, the wrestling. It actually led me to where I'm at right now.
And you've done some, in addition to the Punisher, you've done some work on some really tremendous series, the Tulsa King, Ray Donovan. But what really popped me was one of my favorite series of all times is Banshee.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to specifically ask you about what you did there and where we could find you when I go back and fire it on DVD.
So that was actually one of my first kind of gigs, very early in my stunts and stuff like that. So I was trying to get my name out there, but there wasn't a lot of stuff filming here in Michigan, so it's kind of harder to get your name out there. But they were doing the stunt coordinator for Banshee. They were going to be filming it in Pittsburgh, which is only about 4.5 hours from Detroit. And they were looking for people in the region, in that area, to do a tryout, to do a stunt tryout. So I drove. I spent the night in a parking lot the night before, and I did my tryout. And I got to meet the coordinators, and I got to work out with them, and did a tryout. Went home, and a couple weeks later, I got the call that to come out and do a scene for it. So I got to be in. I got to be. What was it? We were in a bar. The cops were coming to. They were trying to get this guy who's actually playing on. He's playing bass on stage at the time, and we're all just partying and hanging out with the band. And then the cops chase him, whatever. Cop runs into me and falls, and gets all flustered because I'm in his way, and he tries to, one of those kind of things. But it was cool because one of my first major scenes that wasn't. How do I describe it? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time describing it, but it was one of my first big movie or TV deals where I had a trailer and I had things like that. So it was a cool experience. It was kind of what got me rolling, because then I was able to meet other stunt coordinators and stunt performers from there, and then progressively get my name more out there and get more work from there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a cool show. I like that. Yeah. It had a real tight following too, and people really like that show. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look on the IMDb what episode it is, but yeah, it's Matt Servito, who played one of the cops one of the main cops on that show. He's also actually, coincidentally, he's from about 1.5 miles where I live right now here in Michigan. Oh, cool. And so we got to talk a lot of that, and he was the one that he runs into me, and he's like, he wanted to throw a couple other things because we got along real well. He wanted to throw like where he punches me and I don't react or something like that. But the director didn't want to. But we ended up getting along good because we're both Detroit guys, and so it was a fun experience, definitely, and it got me finally rolling.
Cool.
What is, and I've talked to a lot of stunt people on the show over the last 3 to 4 years. One question I always ask them is, what's the most dangerous stunt that you've ever performed?
I haven't done too many super dangerous stuff. I basically do a lot of fight scenes and stuff like that. I do a lot of I play a prisoner a lot. I play a biker a lot, and I always seem to just do a lot of fight scenes. But there was a show called Outsiders where I doubled an actor named Ryan Hurst, who's really famous for being Opie in Sons of Anarchy. And he was, years before, he was actually Gary Vertier in Remember the Titans. So anyway, they were doing this show about a family that lives on a mountain off the grid, and the only way they get around is with ATVs. And so they're going to have an ATV fight, these two guys. And I basically get a rebar stuck in my front tire, and I go flip it over the handlebars. So that was, we've done a lot of fight scenes and other stuff like that, but that was probably about the most dangerous. But the way we did it, it was beautiful. I had it tied off and was able to jump over and clear it. We only did it in one take, and it worked out great. But yeah, I haven't done too many like super dangerous stuff. Mostly fight scenes and motorcycle riding is what I do now.
Is that to do with, obviously, your back, obviously, as well? There's certain things that you probably wouldn't be able to do, or is there certain stuff off the table for you?
Well, this thing is too. See, I'm 6'6", 260 pounds. Most of the actors are, especially the famous actors, they're not very big guys, Yeah. And so I'm usually not doubling an actor. Usually I'm just playing a bad guy where I'm fighting the well-known actor. So I don't usually get to double guys, so I don't usually get to do a lot. And when I do double a guy, it's for a guy like Ryan, who's one of the main characters, and he'll be doing fights and stuff like that, but not necessarily super crazy stuff. So I haven't. It just all depends on what I'd do more things. I'd love to do some high fall stuff. I'd love to do some. I'm looking into maybe doing some fire stuff. I'd love to at least train on doing that. And there's some fire workshops around the Midwest that train that kind of thing and stuff like that. So I'm willing to do more things, but like I said, there is going to be limits as to what a guy my size. I'm not going to be doing. I'm at 6'6", 200. I'm not going to be doing a bunch of acrobatic flips and things like that. But I'll be with that ground and pound fighter that just taking you down and just beating the crap out of you. That's the kind of fighting that, not necessarily martial arts, but more ground and pound stuff.
Yeah.
What do you have in terms of your goals in the entertainment industry that you haven't achieved? Do you have a particular direction that you want to head? Do you have an end point, or are you just cool to continue to build your name and your resume as it comes?
Yeah, and as far as like goals professionally, as far as like things that I might want to do, be in. So I've been lucky. I've been able to be in the Punisher, so I'm in the Marvel universe, and I got to be in Batman vs Superman, so I'm in the DC universe, which is cool. You know, my last thing that I would love to do, I'm a huge Star Wars geek, so I want to get on one of these Star Wars on the Mandalorian or something like that. That's my goal as far as that. But as far as long term, I just want to make a good, I just want to have fun and work and enjoy my work and make a good living for my family. That's really the only reason I got into this business. I just want to be able to make a good living for my family and be able to do something that I enjoy. You know, so many of us are stuck, doing things, for a living that is not what we wanted to do. It's not fun. It's not, it's not our dream. I'm just lucky where I'm able to chase that. And I'm thankful for it every day. And I just hope to continue to be able to do it. That's all.
Jay, I'd like to thank you for your time on the show today. You're
You bet.
very entertaining and a perfect guest for us, being a wrestler and being in the entertainment industry. But before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, what kind of projects have you got on the table at the moment, and where can people follow you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, on social media, I'm at J Adams Stunts, pretty much on everything, on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. I also have my website. You can just go to jadamstunts.com. I'm trying to update that as much as possible. As far as shows, I've got a couple things that I'm filming coming up at the end of this month. Things that I've already filmed. I've done a show out for Apple Plus called Sinking Spring. That's going to be coming out hopefully in the fall. I'm not exactly sure when, but did a few episodes of that. Got to play a biker in one episode, and I got to double a guy in a couple other episodes. So excited to see how that comes out. And I also got to do some little bit of stunt driving, little stuff on Beverly Hills Cop, the new one that's going to be coming out in July. So just trying to stay busy and just, I got a couple of things lined up and just waiting for the next one after that. Just trying to keep as busy as I can.
Awesome.
Well, Jay, I want to echo Morris's comments and thank you for your time tonight. Extremely interesting discussion. We'll keep on top of your career endeavors and wish you continued success.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you.
Well, fans, that's it for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if at all possible. It would really help me out. And don't forget, you can check out my back catalog of videos recording podcast interviews with famous